There's a moment I still think about, the exact second I realized I'd been waiting for someone who was never going to show up in the way I needed them to. Not physically. Emotionally. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It started on an ordinary Tuesday. I was sitting in my car outside a coffee shop, phone in my hand, staring at a text I'd sent 3 hours earlier. 2 gray check marks. No reply. I told myself it was nothing. He's busy. He'll respond when he can. I'd been telling myself some version of that sentence for almost 2 years. His name was Marcus. We'd been friends since college, the kind of friendship where you assume the history means something permanent. He was charming, funny, the guy who could walk into a room and make everyone feel like they mattered. Including me, at least, that's how it felt in the beginning. I worked in logistics back then, a job that kept me busy enough to distract from most things, but not busy enough to distract from Marcus. He had this pattern. He'd disappear for weeks, then resurface like nothing happened, full of energy, full of apologies that weren't quite apologies. Sorry, man, things have just been crazy. And I'd nod and accept it, because that's what you do when you've decided someone is important to you. You build explanations for them before they even have to ask. I remember thinking, at the time, that loyalty meant patience. That the people worth keeping were the ones you didn't give up on, even when they made it hard. I didn't question that belief. I just lived inside it. The thing that first caught my attention wasn't a big blow-up or a betrayal. It was smaller than that. Quieter. I'd mentioned to a mutual friend, almost in passing, that Marcus and I hadn't talked much lately. She got this look on her face, not surprised, more like she already knew something I didn't. Yeah, she said carefully, he's been posting a lot. Seems like he's around. Around. Just not for me. I told myself it didn't mean anything. People get busy. Life happens. But that phrase, he's been posting a lot, sat in my chest for days. I started noticing things I'd been actively avoiding. The way he'd respond to other people's stories within minutes but let my messages sit for hours. The way he always had time for group hangouts but somehow never had time for the one-on-one conversations that used to define our friendship. None of it was dramatic enough to point to and say, "See, this is proof." That was the strange part. It wasn't one incident. It was an accumulation of small absences that I kept explaining away, because admitting the pattern meant admitting something about the relationship I didn't want to face. Then came the moment that changed things. Not because it was shocking, because it was so unremarkable that it forced me to actually look. It was his birthday. I'd planned something small, nothing extravagant, just dinner, because that's what you do for someone who matters to you. I texted him the week before to confirm. No response. I texted again 2 days before. Still nothing. On the day itself, I saw on social media that he was already out celebrating with a group of people I didn't recognize, laughing in a photo posted an hour earlier. I sat there looking at that photo for a long time. And here's the strange thing, I didn't feel angry. I felt something quieter and heavier. I felt like I was watching a version of myself who had spent 2 years auditioning for a role in someone else's life, and only just now realized the part had already been given to someone else. I remember thinking, very clearly, I have been mistaking access for closeness. That sentence didn't come from nowhere. It came from finally letting myself ask a question I'd been avoiding, not, why doesn't he make time for me, but, what have I been doing with the time he doesn't give me? And the honest answer was that I'd been filling it with hope. Waiting. Rearranging my own expectations to fit around his availability, and calling that friendship. I didn't confront him. I want to be clear about that, because I think there's an assumption that these moments always end in some big emotional conversation. This one didn't. What happened instead was smaller and, in its own way, more permanent. I stopped initiating. Not out of spite. Not as a test to see if he'd notice. I stopped because I realized that every message I sent, every plan I made, every excuse I built for his absence, was coming from me. The friendship, if I was honest, had been running almost entirely on my effort for longer than I wanted to admit. And I'd never actually tested what would happen if I just let it be quiet. It was quiet for 3 weeks. Those 3 weeks were harder than I expected. Not because I missed him constantly, but because the silence exposed something uncomfortable: how much of my sense of being valued had been tied to whether he responded to me. I'd check my phone out of habit, not really expecting anything, but still feeling a small drop in my chest each time there was nothing there. I remember catching myself doing this and thinking, this isn't about Marcus anymore. This is about what I've been using him to measure. That was the turning point that mattered more than the birthday photo, more than the unanswered texts. I realized I'd spent 2 years treating his attention as proof of my worth. When he gave it, I felt validated. When he withheld it, I felt like I needed to work harder to earn it back. I had built an entire emotional economy around a person who never asked me to. Somewhere in that 3rd week, I had a conversation with an older coworker, a woman named Denise who'd been in the industry for almost 30 years. I wasn't even talking about Marcus specifically, I just mentioned, in a roundabout way, that I was rethinking a friendship. She said something I've carried with me since. She said, people don't always show you who they are through big moments. They show you through what they consistently choose not to do. I sat with that for a long time. Because it reframed everything. I'd been looking for a reason, an incident, a betrayal, something concrete to justify stepping back. But Denise was right. The pattern itself was the answer. 2 years of small, consistent absences were more honest than any single dramatic event could have been. What shifted in me wasn't anger toward Marcus. It was something closer to release. I stopped needing him to explain himself, because I finally understood that his behavior wasn't a puzzle I needed to solve, it was information I'd been given the whole time. I just hadn't been ready to accept it. Eventually, he did reach out. About a month after his birthday, he texted like nothing had happened, asking if I wanted to grab a drink sometime. And here's the part that surprised me most: I wasn't upset. I wasn't relieved either. I felt strangely neutral, like I was looking at a photo of someone I used to know very well. I did meet him, actually. Once. It wasn't cold or confrontational. We talked, caught up, laughed about a few old memories. But I noticed something different in myself the entire time. I wasn't performing for his approval anymore. I wasn't measuring the conversation by how much he seemed to enjoy it. I was just there, present, without the old anxious undertone of needing him to validate that I mattered. After that dinner, we drifted again. But this time it didn't feel like loss. It felt like clarity. What I learned from all of this wasn't really about Marcus at all. It was about the quiet difference between attachment and value. I used to think that if I felt strongly connected to someone, that feeling alone meant the relationship deserved my continued effort, regardless of what they gave back. But attachment isn't evidence of mutual investment. Sometimes it's just evidence that you've decided someone matters, and you keep making that decision alone, over and over, without ever checking if they've made the same one. The mindset shift wasn't about becoming cold or distant toward people in general. It was about recognizing that detachment isn't the opposite of caring, it's the natural result of finally seeing someone clearly. Once you stop building explanations for a person's absence and start simply observing their patterns, something loosens in you. You stop needing closure from them, because the closure was available the whole time. It was just wearing the disguise of consistent, quiet behavior you'd been talking yourself out of noticing. I think about that photo sometimes, Marcus laughing with people I didn't know, on a day I'd planned around him. I used to think that image represented rejection. Now I think it represented information. The version of me sitting in that car, waiting for 2 gray check marks to turn into something more, had been asking the wrong question the entire time. I wasn't asking, why doesn't he make time for me? I should have been asking, why have I been making all the time for him? I still believe in loyalty. I still believe some relationships are worth patience and effort. But I no longer believe that patience should be one-sided, or that love and friendship are proven through how much you're willing to tolerate. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do for yourself is stop asking someone to explain their absence, and start listening to what that absence has already told you. I wonder how many of us are still waiting on someone who answered us a long time ago, just not with words.